Eswatini enkilongo ngaphasi komphakathi wasemhlabeni kanti ke enkundleni yasesiphofaneni kunayo imiphakathi lelandzelako kuMadlenya, Maphilingo, Enceka, eThambuthi, Mphumakudze kanye ke nakamkhweli. Ngelisonto kutabe kunconywa kunati tindzawo letilandzelako enkundleni yasesiphofaneni ngaphasi komphakathi wasengevini. Imihlangano yokuncoma kuto tonke letindzawo icala ngensimbi yemfica ekuseni. Sive siyakhutsatwa ukuthi siphathe ke tigcebhezane tekuvota noma ke matisi webuve i-National ID. Sive siyakhutsatwa nekuthi sihloniphe ke timiso tekuphepha emkhuhlaneni i-COVID-19. Lesimemetelo sikhishwa ke ngusihlalo waloke libandla Prince Mhlabhlangene Dlamini.
You should make it all about me. Give me some of that.
Good evening, dear viewers, and welcome to the News Bulletin at 8, brought to you by number one news provider, Eswatini TV. I am Nondomiso Vilagata alongside Zaman Zamanze, and here are your top stories. The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini has left the country for Equatorial Guinea to represent His Majesty King Eswatini III in the African Union Summit. Eswatini is making noticeable progress in holding inclusive and fair elections. MTN Premier League games that were expected to take place on Tuesday failed to proceed as match officials did not show up at the games. The news. The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini has left the country for Equatorial Guinea to represent His Majesty King Eswatini III in the African Union Summit. The Prime Minister left through the King Eswatini III International Airport.
The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini left the country for Equatorial Guinea to represent His Majesty King Eswatini III in the African Union Summit, which will take place on the 27th and 28th of this month, where issues to be discussed include humanitarian issues after the COVID-19 pandemic affected many countries, wars, climate change, political issues, amongst other issues. The Prime Minister left through the King Eswatini III International Airport. Reporting about his journey, the Prime Minister says there will be two meetings, including the extraordinary summit where governments are faced by coup, amongst other political issues where the African Union will deliberate on avoiding those.
African Union Summit. Umhlangano we-African Union lapha kuyawuhlangana khona abaholi bemazwe base-Afrika. Yamanje nayo yawumelelwa undunankulu kulo mhlangano. Umhlangano-ke isigaba sawo sekuqala, ilanga lokuqala kuyawuba i-African Union Humanitarian Summit and Pledging Conference. Kusho ukuthi umhlangano lapha emave ayawubuka khona simo lesibucayi lesibheselene nebantu nje evenda se-Afrika. Kuphindze kube nelanga lapha khona kuyawuplejwa kusho ukuthi emave netinhlangano nje letiningi itala e-Afrika itabe tisho ukuthi yini letingasita ngayo. Kuyabe tinikela tisho kulabo basho ukuthi thina singasita ngemali lengukuthi kuze kuhlangabezwe isimo lesibucayi. Isimo lesibucayi ke lesikhuluma ngaso la eAfrika simo lesibangwe tinto letinengani impela ngisho nje ukuthi timpi letibe khona emaveni lamanye ase-Afrika letinye letibange nesimo lesibucayi umkhuhlane wabo COVID lobo ukhona evele nawo lomunye lobange lesimo lesibucayi ne climate change ukuguquka kwesimo nje konke leto ngileti ifesene nemaveni ase-Afrika dabanga ke ukuthi abantu baphatheke kamadima kakhulu kubhekeke ukuthi kulomhlangano uma kuhambe kahle kureyizeke ngalama imali kutholakala imali efika kubo 15 billion US dollars kusho ukuthi ke le mali le nangabe kuhambe kahle yadonatewa ngiyona mali live lase-Afrika lapha litawucala khona lesikhwama sekusita tehlakalo nabo konke nje kumadima eveni lase-Afrika. Umhlangano elangeni lesibili uyawube ukhuluma khona mhlabe kwi-ordinary summit, extraordinary summit lapha kuyabe kukhulunywa khona terrorism and unconstitutional change kusho ukuthi kuyabe kubukwe kukhulunywa nje ngetidlamlilo letikhona generally emaveni ase-Afrika nanakuphela lokuvakala-ke emaveni uvele ukuthi awuhulumende lokuphi sowuketuliwe ngalokungekho emthethweni emava ase-Afrika ngayobukisana ngokuthi yini lengentiwa ukuthi kuze kutholakale likhambo ngokuthi kungaphezi kwenteke lokwenzakalako. Baholi-ke batabe basherisha ngamanye amazwi banikana imibono kusho ukuthi thina eveni lakithi sende njani thina eveni lakithi sende njani ukuthi kumbe size sibukane nalesimo kuyabe-ke aseswa ukuthi nje lesimo mbambamba vele se-terrorism sesikangakanani la e-Afrika sike sabona nje naseMozambique ke yabakhona i-terrorism lapha eCopa Delgado ababehlaselwe khona kudlamlilo kusadakwa amasida naletinye tindzawo nje letiningi le-Horn of Africa kukhona konke lokho.
The Premier says this will be a two-day meeting where they hope to come up with different resolutions after the summit. For Eswatini TV News, I am Kian Msibi at the King Mswati III International Airport.
Eswatini is making noticeable progress in holding inclusive and fair elections. This has been said by the chairperson of the SADC Electoral Advisory Council during an engagement with local media houses on the 2018 post-election review held at Sbane Hotel.
Whenever SADC countries hold presidential or general elections, the SADC Secretariat sends an observation mission called the SADC Electoral Observation Mission SIOM, which then compiles a report of findings and recommendations. The SADC Electoral Advisory Council SIAC is in the Kingdom of Eswatini undertaking post-election review for the Kingdom of Eswatini to establish if the 2018 findings and recommendations of the SADC Electoral Observation Mission SIOM have been implemented by government, EPC, and other relevant stakeholders. The Council on Tuesday had a meeting with local media houses on the role of media in elections and code of conduct as the country prepares for the 2023 elections. SIAC chairperson Dorothy Gabriela says Eswatini is doing noticeable progress as far as SIOM's recommendations are concerned.
We find that there are many things that are happening all at the same time. Progress is being made, but it may not be very elaborate to everyone else because it's all in inception stages. The process of consolidating laws has begun. The process of trying to meet with different media houses and look into code of conduct is going to start immediately soon. So there are progresses that are being made in different areas, but it's work in progress.
SIAC member Professor Mpho Molomo said, despite raised concern by other citizens, Eswatini observes her elections in accordance with the country's constitution.
When we come and observe elections, we observe them on the basis of the legal instruments, on the basis of the laws and customs of a country. Now, as it stands out, Swaziland, in terms of Section 79 of its constitution, has devised a process of how the elections are going to be conducted. And they say it is based on individual merit and it is based on a Dinkundla system. And we observe your elections on the basis of those processes. It is if the people of Eswatini want to vary the electoral system, then it is for them to do so, and it is not for us. But what obtains is that we would want to satisfy ourselves that in terms of the standards that the country has set itself, that it is abiding by those standards.
The council is expected to meet with other stakeholders, including academia, religious organizations, and the members of parliament, amongst others. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I am Samkel Siwekoza with Muslim Konta, Eswatini.
The Population Service International Country Director in Eswatini, Dr. Endel Tilahan, says the girl-empowered approach on HIV and sexual reproductive health project is meant to assist the Maswati to eradicate early unintended pregnancy. Dr. Tilahan was speaking during a sexual reproductive health meeting held at Lukongolweni in Nkundla.
The Population Service International PSI in Eswatini, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, provided sexual reproductive education for girls under Lukongolweni constituency. Speaking about the project brief, PSI Country Director Dr. Endel Tilahan says they are focusing on preventing early unintended pregnancy among young girls.
We're mainly focusing on sexual reproductive health services to complement existing programs and services in Eswatini, focusing on adolescent girls and young women. The objective we're trying to achieve is through this integration to be able to prevent unwanted pregnancies through dealing and exploring and working and co-designing with the Ministry of Health on main areas of challenges related to demand creation and supply side of the program.
The Ministry of Health, Sexual Reproductive Health's focal person, Zandile Masangane, says the ministry is working on ensuring that health facilities are friendly to young people who seek sexual reproductive health.
Itiko likwenda kuyo yonke imitholampilo lekhona even la kaNgwane ukuthi bemukeleke kahle abantu labasha bakhulumiseke kahle batokhona phela kube kade idzingeko tabo tetempilo nekuthi banakekeleke etindzabeni tabo tekukhula nasetindzabeni taka HIV ukuthi bavikeleka kanjani noma ngabe ke sebalitholile igciwane banakekeleka kanjani kuze ukuthi baqhubeke babe nempilo lecicimako.
The Lukongolweni Member of Parliament, Ntshetselelo Makongo, says young people of his constituency were empowered on how to create their own businesses.
Basita mayelana neqala tinwetindlela tekonga netindlela teqala nje amabhizinisi babasita ke nani babasita nalapho ukuthi bawacela kanjani amabhizinisi so that labantwana batawukwati ukutimela batawubalekela lenkinga yokuthi bafuna ukudepende kumuntu ukhanze ukuthi ngoba nginemadlana mina nomfana sengidamendisa noma yini.
Nolwazi Matonsi, representing young people, says they were educated on different contraceptives. Matonsi says the issue of preventing HIV was also addressed.
Basite ukuthi si-connect ivikela sisebenzisa boma-condoms for ticasi bese ukuthi for kuba pregnant kuvikela pregnant ukuthi sihlele.
For Eswatini TV News, Ndomlangeni with Themba Shabangu in Lukongolweni.
Gender-based violence has become a global concern such that governments have a role to play in ending gender-based violence. The Republic of China, Taiwan held virtually the 2022 Global Corporations Training Framework Conference on ending gender-based violence, which was attended by different organizations in Eswatini. The event was attended at Sbane Hotel, Ezulwini.
Gender-based violence has become a global problem such that all countries have seen the need to address and put an end to it. The Republic of China, Taiwan held a global conference named the 2022 Global Cooperation and Training Framework on Ending Gender-Based Violence. In this virtual meeting, participants are expected to gain a better understanding on exchanging experiences and ideas to motivate policy making for eliminating all forms of gender-based violence. Trent Tseng of the Taiwan Embassy in Eswatini says governments have a role to play in ending gender-based violence, thus the importance of the meeting.
And today's theme is about ending gender-based violence. We think this is also very important. This echoes Eswatini's current trend and awareness on improving women's rights and also gender equality, as well as eliminating all forms of gender-based violence. We hope our participants all over the world can get a better understanding on improving the women's rights and also the rights and also of women and girls.
Participants including Swaka's Hlopsile Dlamini, 1 Billion Rising Kolani Hlochago and Malangani Dlamini, a crime prevention officer at Lobamba, said they've learned new methods of abuse like digital violence and how to address those.
It's of very significant importance because it addresses emerging forms of gender-based violence that are coming partially from the COVID-19 pandemic as well as other global challenges that are there. And in particular, with a special focus to minority groups, which I think a lot of societies and countries tend to neglect.
This is also a reflection on how is the sketch of gender-based violence, not only in Swaziland but globally, because here we are seeing countries sharing where are they in terms of the level of gender-based violence. And nathi-ke sibe live la kangwane siyafunza ekutheni what is it that we can improve.
Phinza sifunze lapha ngekhathi kokuthi yini indlela lengasita kokuthi kuncishiswe lokho ba kakhulu kugcizelelwa kokuthi singakunciphisa kanjani ke kuhlukubetana kwebamvu ngebulili.
This conference is aimed at ensuring that lawmakers play a vital role in putting laws into action against perpetrators of gender-based violence. For Eswatini TV News, I am Kian Msibi at the Sibane Hotel, Ezulwini.
The COVID-19 pandemic, HIV and AIDS and the civil unrest saw the hike in people requiring counseling as numbers skyrocketed from 300 to 3,000 people in 2 years. This has been said by Eswatini Business Health and Wellness Chief Executive Officer Tobile Dlamini during an HIV and AIDS traumatic stress symposium held at Sibane Lodge.
The Eswatini Business Health and Wellness EBH, formerly known as SWAPCHA, in partnership with different stakeholders, is hosting an HIV and AIDS and traumatic stress symposium. The EBH Chief Executive Officer Tobile Dlamini says the COVID-19 pandemic, HIV and AIDS, and the civil unrest saw the hike in people requiring counseling as the numbers skyrocketed from 300 to 3,000 people in 2 years.
But as we were dealing with that in 2021, June 29 happened. And that changed the way we looked at ourselves as a nation. The brutality we saw, the death of young people we saw, the pain we saw, because we experienced the pain as relatives, we experienced the pain as family members, we experienced the pain as co-workers, as all these things were happening. Within that short period of time, 2 years, our statistics of needing counseling moved from a mere 300 per year to 2,000 and something, almost 3,000. The number that required debriefings also shot up. Companies were calling, can you come and see our people? We've just lost a key member. Can you come and talk to this one? It's just lost a husband. And when you talk to these people, their pain was similar. We are cognizant that if we don't do something about this, we are breeding a nation that will be very angry.
UNAIDS Country Director Rose Craig says to end AIDS by 2030, the Kingdom of Eswatini must upscale community involvement.
In the Kingdom of Eswatini, there are a few things that we really need to focus on. One of the issues we need to focus on is to ensure that at least 80% of our HIV prevention programs are delivered by the community. We need to ensure that the community, whether it is women-led groups or even youth-led groups, are the ones that are implementing these programs. Why? Because they are the people that we are serving.
Nature's head of programs, Mphikeleli Dlamini, highlighted HIV new trends.
In females, 1,141 tested for resistance. So this means they first tested for HIV in the same process, and they tested positive. And of those 119, so roughly 120, adolescents, 15 to 19. So this is still a problem because this is everyone who tested and tested positive. But then we go a step further within the 1.1 to establish the resistance test. And we found out, close to 120 adolescent girls.
The meeting is expected to end on Wednesday with recommendations on how to proper raise awareness on trauma. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Samgal Swekoza with Fuminkosin Sinisa Matsapa.
The Ministry of Health is hosting a 5-day workshop for Regional Rapid Response Team on the Integrated Disease Surveillance and Response Framework. This has been said by the epidemiologist at the Ministry of Health, Vusi Lokotwago.
Since its establishment, the Kingdom of Eswatini became part of the Integrated Disease Surveillance and Response Framework, IDSR, which is a tool for African countries on how to monitor data for disease outbreaks. The Ministry of Health is hosting a 5-day workshop on the IDSR for regional rapid response teams, more specifically the data collecting team. Epidemiologist at the Ministry of Health, Vusiloko Fago, says the data collecting team is key to the country's responsive measures.
The data team is the one that is actually in the regions and actually monitoring the collection of the data. As the data comes in, you are in a position to say we are in an outbreak mode because you know the thresholds, you know your data. So when the data comes, they are able to actually report, and then we actually interrogate that to see whether we're in an outbreak phase or not. So what we do as a country, we classify it into two forms. There comes the alert mode, whereby we actually look at the data to say, look, an outbreak might be coming. And then as it escalates into epidemic thresholds, that is where we then activate the response. But we do investigate also even at alert phase so that we catch any disease as early as possible.
The workshop is expected to cover all healthcare workers and it will end on Friday. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, I'm Samkal Suekoza with Fuminkosin Senesa Matapa.
Dear viewers, now take a look at our financial updates.
Standard Bank. It can be.
Welcome back. You're still watching Eswatini TV, and for your sports news tonight, MTN Premier League games that were expected to take place on Tuesday failed to proceed as match officials did not show up at the games. By the time of compiling this report, the referee's manager under the Office of the National Football Association was unavailable on his cell phone for a full report.
MTN Premier League games that were expected to proceed on Tuesday failed to take place as referees and match officials did not show up at the venues. Chances of getting a proper report on why referees could not show up was not a success, as the referees managed officer under the National Football Association was unavailable on his cell mobile by the time this report was being compiled. A Eswatini TV Sports desk that was at the Mofso Sports Center, where Denver Sundown was expected to face Rangers, got a chance to speak to the two teams' coaches to get their reaction on the matter.
It does really affect the mindset for everyone, especially the players. To tell them that there's no match and we've got to prepare again. We don't even know when we're going to be playing again. It does really have a heavy, burden on the mindset of the players.
Kuyasiphathamisa kakhulu because one sikhathi sesihambile and badlali bayabala ukuthi siyadlala nyalo siyadlala ngesondo siyachitha siyophumula. and bese sekufika sigaba lesifana nalesi and bese kuyalimata kuba ngwazi ukuthi labadlali bonemanga ukuthi kuyadlala.
Supporters who also had bought tickets to watch their teams raised their concerns on the matter.
Ibuhlungu ngoba isibisele emuva instead ukuthi si-improve ebholeni yethu yakangwane. Sishiye konke into tethu emabhizinisi satosapota emateam ethu sabhadala sathi ukuthi iyawubuya njani yaleyo mali yethu uma seyichubeka le game maybe siyibuyela lidlala.
Why bese ma-team awesta kakhulu asuke i-Rangers nje isukele ekhashana enhlangano idendle ibhadelele ground lana kwekuthi abakatshelwa ngani kokuthi kutaba bede borafela.
Kungilimate kakhulu because ngishiye konke lenkwendako just to watch lama games and lawa ama games ekugcina vele kulukhuni kakhulu ukuthi ubese uyamisa out.
The Office of the Chief Operation Officer of the Premier League explained that a proper report was to be released when the games will be played again and to how the supporters also will get their funds. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera with Nomfundo Smelane, Mansini.
Eswatini Olympic and Commonwealth Games Association has donated solidarity scholarships to 6 athletes in preparation for the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. The scholarship is worth over 3 million emalangeni for the next 27 months.
Eswatini Olympics and Commonwealth Games Association has handed over scholarships to 6 local athletes in preparations for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. The athletes are Subsiso Matsenjwa and Bongio Mahlela, both from Athletic Association, Simanga Dlamini and Hailey Hoy, both from Swimming Association, Tabiso Dlamini from Boxing Association, and Carlota Manuva from Taekwondo Association.
And at the end of the day, we're happy that the office has been able to get this kind of scholarships that we believe will go in a long way in assisting our high performance athletes to achieve their goals. And at the end of the day, put the country at that top level.
Chief Executive Officer of Eswatini Olympics and Commonwealth Games Association, Maxwell Jele, explained how the scholarship will work.
There are stringent obligations, both on the part of the athlete, in particular, the awardees of the scholarships, which they need to adhere to. The reporting on this program is going to be on a 4-month cycle, as we are starting now in May, where the awardees are going to present their budgets for the 4-month cycle and are also going to be evaluated every 4 months. The value of this scholarship for the country amounts to $7,500 US dollars per month. So meaning that we've got 6 awardees this time around that are going to be sharing this $7,500 US dollars. As mentioned earlier on, is that this is really to assist the athletes to qualify for the next Olympics.
The scholarship is expected to run for 27 months. On another note, Eswatini Olympic and Commonwealth Games Association President Adam Mtsetwa congratulated Pearl Dlamini on her new role as the new executive member of the International Boxing Association.
Congratulations. I come from a sports association that is so popular, and none of us ever got to the level that you will find yourself in. And I think wherever you are, you should not forget that this should benefit the country.
For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera, Zulwini.
That is all we had for tonight, but before we wrap up, we'll take a quick recap of today's headlines. The Prime Minister Cleopas Dlamini has left the country for Equatorial Guinea to represent His Majesty King Mswati III in the African Union Summit. Eswatini is making noticeable progress in holding inclusive and fair elections. MTN Premier League games that were expected to take place on Tuesday failed to proceed as match officials did not show up at the games. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin tonight. Up next is the weather forecast for selected towns. Good night, Eswatini.